Hey, NFL fans, welcome to another episode of NFL Jocks and Pigskins. I'm your host, Dave Holcomb, with my co-host, as always, Tom Pollen. And as you can see, we have a really special guest with us today that we've been plugging the last couple of weeks. Tom has been doing a great job of plugging him. And I'm going to kind of hand the baton here to Tom because this is Tom's, he started this campaign for Mike. And I think it's only fitting that Tom continues it today with our special guest.
Well, a couple of years ago, I wrote an article. It was, off season. It was kind of like a happy birthday article. And I started looking at all your stats, and I just, your games played, left tackle, how durable you were. And I couldn't believe that you weren't in the Hall of Fame. And it just amazed me. And at this point, a couple of weeks ago, I decided end of August, the senior committee makes their announcement. And it's time to really get a push going because you do deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. So we were able to work it out this week, and we were able to get number 78, left tackle for the Atlanta Falcons, Mike Kenn. And pleasure to have you on. Love having you on.
I'm glad we did work it out. I'm looking forward to it. Tom, you brought something up that, the one thing about the Hall of Fame, one a lot of people don't realize is the Hall of Fame technically is not actually linked to the NFL. It's independent of the NFL. It's not the NFL Hall of Fame. It's the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So they run that operation, entirely themselves. When I guess this is my platform to go ahead and point some things out.
Absolutely.
One of the things is that I have a little bit of a problem with the Hall of Fame is that it's an individual honor that takes team success too much into consideration. Mm-hmm. The one thing that I think they hold against me is in my 17 years, I only had 4 winning seasons, and 3 of them were in the first 5 years. And then we went on like a 9-year losing streak. And then finally, Jerry Glanville got us back in the playoffs in 91. It's our fourth full season, playing, and that was it. The other thing I think is not a correct way to analyze a player's participation is that it's not really the games played, it's how many did they start. Now, there's only one other offensive left tackle in the game that started as many games as me, and that's Lomas Brown. There's only at 251. There's only one other offensive lineman who started more games than Lomas and I, and that's Bruce Matthews. But Bruce Matthews played basically center and guard. He played a couple seasons at left tackle because of injuries and personnel, but basically his 9 to 18 years or whatever it was is all played at center and guard, not left tackle.
Right.
When you go ahead and look at and I'm not disparaging Jackie Slater. Jackie Slater played a year longer than me. He played in more games than me, but he didn't start starting, I think, till his 4th year. So he only has 211 starts.
Yeah.
There's only one other offensive tackle in the game that has over 200 games played, and he was a teammate of mine, Bob Whitfield, who played 220. So in reality, there's only 4 offensive tackles in the history of the NFL who played more than 200 games. Even, Doug Deacon, who was a perennial left tackle for Cleveland, played 194. Joe Thomas, played 167. Orlando Pace only started 169 games.
Right.
So, and the other thing I'd like to point out, it's much harder to play at a high level on a poor or crappy team than it is to play at a high level.
I was gonna ask you about that. Keeping your motivation up, that's got to be rough.
Well, especially at left tackle, protecting the blind spot is that it's really difficult when you're throwing the ball by the middle of the second quarter for the rest of the game because you're already down by 3 or 4 touchdowns. and I'm playing against the best players best, most gifted athlete on the team, which is usually the either outside rush end or outside rush linebacker.
Exactly.
And
Well, that's why I would say left tackle is the most demanding position on the offensive line, and it's amazing that you were able to start as many games as you did there.
yeah, and then the other thing is that I'm the only left tackle that is, other than Jason Taylor, who's a lot younger than I am, and I agreed that he needed to be in the Hall of Fame. I did not agree that he was a first ballot guy. I'm the only offensive tackle that has played against every outside rush end or outside rush linebacker that's in the Hall of Fame. Not even Anthony Munoz did that because Anthony didn't play against Nflpa, and I did.
And I looked up your record, and I noticed your first start was against Nflpa.
It was, yeah. And Earl Campbell was the running back. He was the first pick of the draft that year. That was a funny story. So the game started. It was Houston's first possession, and we kicked off to the Oilers, and it was down around the 20-yard line or something like that. And you know how big and powerful Earl Campbell was. So I don't know whether it was the first play or third play or whatever. They threw a little swing pass to Earl Campbell in the flat, and we had at least 3, if not 4, defensive backs had the angle on him. Gone. Touch. Yeah. Didn't even come close to him. He had some speed. So
yeah, that's the amazing thing. As big and as strong as he was, yeah, he'd breakaway speed too.
He really did, yeah.
So yeah, I always just
Mad Mike is here.
Mad Mike, he is here today. The legend Mike Kenn. Yep. Glad to have Mad Mike with us. He's a regular watcher, and we've had him on the show a couple of times. He's with the Atlanta Falcons Network and does a great job himself. So glad to have him here and able to chime in and comment.
Another thing I'd like to point out is that I made 5 Pro Bowls in a row, and I was a shoo-in to go ahead and make my 6th Pro Bowl. And then in the 11th game of that 1985 season, I blew my knee out. So I missed the last 5 games of the year, and 85 and 84 were 2 losing seasons. So I was still playing at a high level, and I'm still considered, one of the best in the game. I think I made 3 all 80s decade teams, and then we never had another winning season for 7 more years, and they just forgot about me.
That seems to be the case. It's ridiculous that, so many tackles you hear about, they're winning teams. But, the main thing I've always thought is there's a lack of counting stats, and it's always been hard for offensive linemen because you don't have those counting stats. You don't have sacks. You don't have now you're getting to the point of sacks prevented, Pro Football Focus, NFL.com with their next-gen stats are trying to step in and give offensive linemen something measurable that they could hang next to their name. But it's got to be tough when you have no real counting stats that you could still, trying to convince the voters of your worth to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, they didn't start tracking sacks until later in my career, and depending on whose numbers you look at, I think it was one that's when you go ahead and compare. I have it actually written down somewhere in here. I averaged 5.29 sacks a year, and there was only one offensive tackle that actually was slightly lower than I was. So you have to put my older glasses on.
Well, that's the thing, and I urge, and I've been urging all Falcons fans who tune into the show, urging them to go to MikeKennFootball.com because a lot of this information is there, and you can see all the work that some people have done, that your daughter has done to try and bring your career, try and put a highlight on your career that so your name doesn't fall away and gets completely forgotten for Hall of Fame consideration.
Yeah, the only reason I got into, I think twice, was in the top 25 or the final 25 had to do with my daughter Lisa.
Yeah.
And it was 100% her effort, and she has to get all the credit for it. And now, obviously, we're in the old timers class, and
right.
And I like the fact that they have a senior committee now, and that senior committee, I think, is composed of 6 electors, and those electors make the decision.
Yeah.
I also like the fact that they started to go ahead on every other year, go ahead and induct, 2 senior members every year instead of 1. And they flip-flop it with contributors. I don't like the fact that the contributors in the senior selections are considered or competing with each other.
Well, they're not anymore.
They're not.
No. Every year is going to be a senior and a contributor nominee.
Yeah, but don't they flip-flop 2 1 year, 1 next year?
Not anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they stopped that. So last year was the first year of that. It's supposed to be on a trial basis until 2024, but I think they'll keep going with it afterwards because they had so many senior candidates and so many contributor candidates that I think they wanted to see get in, and just kept failing, and it kept piling up. So they've made that change. I think that change is going to be permanent.
Well, good. The other thing is that there's no qualifying criteria for consideration.
Right.
Yeah. So each elector has their own qualifying criteria of who they think should be inducted into the Hall of Fame. And they don't meet as a group, I understand, until they're down to the final 15.
Yes, that's correct.
So they're other than whatever form of communication they want to have between their other electors, they don't sit down and actually have a vote until the final 15. Now that's for current players now, and it's obviously it's different for the seniors.
Yeah, but the main thing is, and this is what I've been trying to push the last couple of weeks, is with the Pro Football Hall of Fame, you can write in and nominate. You can write in and nominate anyone. If you want to write in and nominate Chris Miller as your quarterback, you can go ahead and write in and nominate. But that's the thing. The fans really do have a stake in this. And which is what I've been trying to push, is that write in, say you want Mike Kenn nominated as a senior committee candidate. And if we get enough mail into the Hall of Fame, this puts you back into the mindset of the selecting committee again. If we can get enough mail-in activity to get you going, to get your career considered again. And that's kind of what we've been trying to do.
There's one other thing that a lot of people don't realize too, is that I was elected the president of the Nflpa in 1989. Okay. And I was the first elected president to serve more than 1 term, because every time an NFL player got elected as president, they were either cut or they were traded and cut.
That's right.
It happened to Gene Upshaw. So I would even happen to Marvin Powell. So I served 4 consecutive terms. And in 1989 is the year that we actually decertified, and we went ahead and sued the NFL in antitrust court in Minneapolis with Judge Doty. Well, that court settlement basically that Gene Upshaw and I led the NFL players through is that resulted in the most prolific economic growth of the NFL for both owner and player, and the longest period of labor peace that has ever existed in the NFL. So it was, and I'll be honest with you, I don't get enough credit for me because I was an elected official. Technically, according to the NFLPA Constitution, I have a higher stature as the elected official than Gene being hired as the executive.
Right. Yeah, even player reps to the Nflpa had problems with their teams getting cut.
Oh yeah,
De-emphasized. That was a rough period of time for NFL players.
82 strike we were through, the 87 strike when they played the scab games and we were picking it and doing all that.
Awful. They terrible.
Yeah,
what they were trying to do.
Yeah, they started the quarterback club and they were picking off all the quarterbacks, player, the NFL was, and I'll give kudos to two quarterbacks who never signed with the quarterback club. Was Dan Marino, who was actually on the executive committee with me, and also Joe Montana, two Pittsburgh guys that never signed up for that.
Yeah, that's great.
There you go, Pittsburgh guys.
Pittsburgh are a lot like Chicago guys. That's why I like Pittsburgh.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah,
me being from Pittsburgh.
Well, I was a frequent visitor to Permane Brothers when I was.
Oh yeah, Permane Brothers is great. Yeah. Well, Mike, we have some questions from our listeners,
Sure.
And I'm sure Tom has some questions. I have a couple as well. I wanted to ask you who was the most difficult person to block that you ever faced, but we also have a question from a listener, Gary, who asked who was the best edge rusher you faced not in the Hall of Fame.
Well, let me first give you my top four. And I don't want to rank them, first to fourth or whatever. Is that the top four were basically Lawrence Taylor, Bruce Matthews, Richard Dent, and Leroy Selman. Okay, and in fact, Leroy Selman didn't get a lot of recognition because he knew how crappy the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Again, yes, because of his team.
Even though he was a consummate All-Pro. And they played him out of a 3-4 defense. In fact, when we were in the Pro Bowls, we went back and forth from the defenses run a 3-4 to a 4-man line. And the NFC offensive linemen, we all knew about Leroy because we played against Tampa more because, AFC, there wasn't interconference play that much. And we used to laugh at the AFC offensive tackles because they were in a 4-man line. That means they couldn't double team Leroy, and he was just eating their lunch. They'd never seen anybody like him. The best I played that didn't make the Hall of Fame was probably Al Baker from the Detroit Lions. And there was another player for the Packers. His last name was Harrison, I think. I can't remember his first name right now. It'll come to me. But Al Baker was a really good player for the Detroit Lions. Tall, rangy, had long arms, had all the moves and everything. But he played on a crappy team too. So
that's true. Exactly. It's amazing how that keeps coming back as a topic and as a problem with a lot of these players is, if you didn't get, do you think maybe playing on that team, did you ever get a lot of Monday Night Football where you're playing on the main stage? Or were the Falcons kind of overlooked even then?
We were overlooked for quite a while. I don't remember how many times we played in whether it was in the late 70s or early 80s, maybe 2 or 3 times. And then I don't think we played again until maybe it was 91 or 92 or 90 or something like that. And I ended up making an all-Madden team because John Madden loved me.
Yeah.
Can't make the all-Madden.
You're the kind of guy who Madden would love, yes.
Yeah, old school. So you had to play. He had to be, doing the color, on the game that they were broadcasting for you to be considered to make the all-Madden team. But they only covered the big games, So.
Well, I was about to say you really didn't see Summer All-Madden all that much because, again, playing with the Falcons, unless you were playing one of the big teams.
Correct. Yeah.
During those years, I remember Madden doing a lot of Bears games. And,
85 Bears. They actually came down for the NFC Championship game to practice in our facility in 85.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then actually Jeff Van Note and I, they gave us, that's the year I blew out my knee. they actually gave us tickets. So Jeff Van Note and I had sideline passes when they played the Rams in that game in '85.
Wow.
And I was in a hip to ankle splint on crutches on the sideline watching the Bears beat the Rams to go to the Super Bowl. I knew a lot of the Bears players. A teammate of mine, John Scully, who went to Notre Dame, played left guard with me, and then his brother-in-law, Tommy Thayer,
Yes.
who also went to Notre Dame, was on that Bears team in '85.
That's right.
Yeah, and they came down to practice against us a few times. So, I know Mike Ditka and Singletary was on the executive committee with me. I know a lot of the Bears from the '80s. Dan Hampton's a good friend of mine, and I'm sorry to hear what happened with Steve McMichael. That's just terrible to hear. I used to be on a first name basis with, not good friends, but on a first name basis with some of those mid '80s Bears teams, and hearing some of the problems that they've had, like McMichael, who I met one time, is just a fantastic person. Yeah, he is.
Keith Van Horn, I knew, was a very good acquaintance of mine, and never get me to say a bad word about Keith Van Horn.
No, I know Jimbo Covert, and know the center well, and Walter Payton was a friend of mine. No, McMahon, Gary Fensick, and I knew all those guys. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. Even on the MikeKennFootball.com site, one of the first endorsements is from Dan Hampton, and it really is impressive. It's impressive the endorsements you received from a lot of players on the MikeKennFootball.com site. Jim Hannafin, you got one from Leroy Selman. Dan Hampton talking about knew Richard Dent would have his hands full all day. I think the Bears actually had a very good respect for the way you guys play your offensive line, because you always had great offensive line play in Atlanta.
Well, I played with two really good offensive lines in my career. One was when we had three All-Pros on the line, and it was in the late 70s and the early 80s, where we had myself as an All-Pro, Jeff Van Note, and then we had R.C. Tillman. Okay, Then I had the offensive line that included myself, Bill Fralick, and then Chris Hinton, three All-Pros. Here's the interesting thing. The Falcons started trying to replace me late in my career.
Okay.
In 1989, they drafted a guy in the first round called Ralph Norwood, and unfortunately, he died in a car accident that year at Thanksgiving. But he was drafted to replace me. Then in 1990, they made a trade for Chris Hinton from Indianapolis. And Chris Hinton, they traded for him to replace me. What position did Chris play? Right tackle.
Right tackle. Yes.
1992, they drafted Bob Whitfield in the first round. And Chris left. What position did Bob play? He played right tackle. And then they drafted Lincoln Kennedy in 1993. What position? He didn't even play until after I retired. Then they moved Bob Whitfield to left tackle, and Lincoln Kennedy started at right tackle. So the old guy, older than all of them, none of them could. Mike's slowing down. He needs to go right tackle, and they go, no, he's still the best left tackle we got. He's still playing. So,
well, it's amazing how many guys, even today, who get drafted to be a left tackle and then end up on the right side. Can't seem to cut it at left tackle.
Well, I see that a lot. In fact, it's actually really frustrating for me to watch the game now because nobody's teaching the position correctly anymore. This whole thing called the six kick slide for tackles is the worst idea that was ever come up on how to do that. Opening your hip and pointing your toe out. It shortens the corner for the tackles and makes you susceptible to the inside move because they're too spread out. Your toes are pointed, out instead of up the field and everything. So nobody's teaching the position correctly anymore. And I get tired of watching quarterbacks getting killed. I mean, if they're playing under the old rules, Tom Brady would not be playing football if they still had the old rules. rules would not be happening.
Right.
He'd be so busted up, it's ridiculous because, the era that I played. But, you need, like I said, they always put the best athlete on the outside rush end position. They just do.
Right.
But, it is what it is.
I wanted to ask you about, the end of your career. You brought it up where Falcons tried to replace you a few different times. So do you kind of relate to a Julio Jones or maybe a Matt Ryan type now, seeing that, they're Hall of Fame like players and they're getting towards the end of their careers? Julio maybe still has some great years left, but their time in Atlanta coming to an end or has come to an end. And do you relate to that at all, seeing Matt Ryan and Julio Jones today?
I do. I was only a free agent 1 year in 1990, going to the 94 season. And the oddity there was that Jackie Slater was a free agent at the same time, too. And here's two legacy players, one for the Rams, me for the Falcons. And I was visiting the Rams and he was visiting the Falcons.
God.
For his consideration to sign us as a free agent, which I said, there's a real oddity to this. But the one thing that players have to realize, so now there's limited free agency, is that football players are a commodity. And just like a commodity, your value goes up or down or everything. And now with the salary cap and everything like that, when you got a commodity that still might have 1 or 2 years left on you, but it's eating up too much of your cap room, you're going to be gone. And that's basically what happened to Julio Jones.
Yeah.
I knew Julio was going to be gone because who are you going to get rid of? Matt Ryan or Julio Jones? Even if you drafted a quarterback in the third pick this past year, that quarterback, was not going to start in that first year. They need Matt Ryan to go ahead and tutor him because Matt Ryan does not get the credit that he deserves. The only reason that the Falcons have been competitive is because of Matt Ryan, how good he is.
Right. See, I feel the same way about it. And I've been saying that for a long time, is that Matt Ryan really, you never see him named among the elite in the NFL, but he is among the elite in the NFL. And he's going to finish among one of the best passers the game has ever seen.
Yeah, the highest. Yeah, exactly. And the problem with the Falcons was not their offense; it was their defense. When you got to score 30-plus points a game to win the game every week, that's tough to do. And they did that. The season that they went to the Super Bowl, they were scoring over 30 points a game.
Right.
Yeah, but if you're in a knockdown drag-out like it's a 17-14 game, they're not going to win that. It's just the way it was. They've never had any defense, and they still are very skeptical on defense. They don't have anybody to rush the passer.
Yeah,
been saying it every week.
They've drafted a lot of edge rushers, but they were all one-dimensional. I mean, a guy that's nothing but a speed rusher, if he doesn't have a counter move, that's an easy day for an offensive tackle. The only thing I have to stop is a speed rusher. Does he have a bull rush? Does he have an inside move? No. See, because there's three kinds of pass rushers. There's a instinct rusher, there's a predetermined rusher, and then there's the setup artist. Now, Bruce Smith and Lawrence Taylor were instinct rushers, which means when the ball snapped, they had no idea that what they were going to do. They were going to go ahead and react to what the tackle was doing instinctively. Hardest ones to block. The predetermined rusher is like a guy like Pat Swilling. And I knew what he was going to do every time he gave it away. I never told him that. Why would I? Whether it was going to be speed rush up the field, or it was going to go ahead and be an inside move or something like that. And then there's the setup artist. And guess who the setup artist was? Richard Dent. Okay. Richard Dent people always tried to figure out why Richard Dent at a key point in the game was able to get the big sack. Because Richard was setting that offensive tackle up the entire game and waiting for that key point. He would slow rush you. He would do this, becoming 60, 70%. Then all of a sudden, you didn't know what was going to happen. But you had to really be on your toes and wait for it because you knew it was coming. And all of a sudden, he comes at you at 110%. The offensive tackle goes, where the hell did that come from? Sack. So those are the three kind of pass rushers in the at the outside edge position.
Oh, that's fascinating. That is really something. I never thought about it that way. So that.
Well, it wasn't your job to. So.
But
that was my living.
You brought up today's game and Tom Brady not being able to play till 44. I think he's turning 44 in August. If he had played in your era, one of Mad Mike's questions that we have from the chat: is there any part of today's game from a tackle standpoint that makes you a bit jealous that you're not playing today?
Well, I think the highest paid offensive tackle is getting $18.5 million a year now.
Yeah,
I'm a little envious of that. I just keep telling myself that God chooses when you were born. So.
Yeah, I would say that would get you definitely.
Yeah.
One of the things is I've been looking up a lot of your career, and I wonder if this is maybe hurting your candidacy for Hall of Fame and the way some of the voters look at your game. Is a lot of people seem to use the word technically sound left tackle, knew everything on a technical basis, not necessarily a physical left tackle.
Well, the better your techniques and your fundamentals are is an enhancement to any player that's playing the position.
Right.
And what I see is a complete either one incorrect techniques, wrong techniques that's making it so much harder for offensive linemen to protect a quarterback and even run block now because they're not utilizing any sound fundamentals or techniques. So, I finished my career with 295 pounds, and they still wanted me to go ahead and get bigger. And I said, okay, let me ask, are you unhappy with my work? No. He says, I can bench press 475 pounds. I can squat 700 pounds. And you want me to put on 20 pounds of fat, you think that's going to make me even more effective than I am now? No. I think that most of the offensive linemen in the business now are at least 20 to 25 pounds overweight.
Why do you think the game moved in that direction?
It's like E = MC squared. They think bigger is more powerful, and it's not. But what happens is that they lose their athleticism. The other thing I see with offensive linemen is that they're training them wrong in the weight room. They're training them like power lifters. There's two kinds of muscles in the human body. There's fast twitch muscles and slow twitch muscles. The slow twitch muscles are your power muscles, and that's what power lifters do. The fast twitch muscles are your athletic muscles, and you have to train both of them. If you only train the slow twitch, then you get big, strong, slow, and cumbersome. So you have to train the fast twitch so you can get big and strong and also have flexibility and athleticism associated with it. And I see that not only in the NFL, but I see it in college too. They fell in love with size and mass. Look how big that guy is. And I go, well, let's see how he can move his feet. Okay? Yes. If you can't move your feet, you can't pass block. You can run block because, and it's an aggressive forward thing. How does he move his feet? My nickname was the dancer because I had very quick feet. I also was probably the fastest offensive lineman that ever ran the 40. My 40 time was 4.67.
Wow. Okay. That's something. But you made it work, and see, that's the thing. Even though you didn't have the size, but are you being penalized because of your size? But it's.
That could be, then that's just the evidence of a misconception by the electors, the sports writers, who just don't understand it. How does a sports writer know more about playing offensive tackle than I do? It's impossible for them to know that. I didn't take any journalism classes in school, so I'm not going to go ahead and critique their writing ability. And for them to go ahead and form a critical opinion on why somebody's good or not. He said, well, the only reason he was good was he had better technique than everybody else. Well, that's kind of contradictory, isn't it? The reason I was better than everybody else is because I had better technique than everybody else. Well, that's the only reason it was good. Well, isn't that reason enough?
Yeah.
Well, that's my point.
Yeah.
You got the job done.
Better than anybody else.
Yeah, you protected your quarterback. You got the job done. It doesn't, just because you weren't a guy who is bowling forward into your opponent on the other side of the line, doesn't matter. You still manage to protect your quarterback, and that's what counts. That's the game.
Yeah, and and I played in every offense. I played in in the early years we played like the old Rams offense because that's where Leland Bennett came from, and we were running probably 60% of the time then. And we also did a lot of pulling and trapping back there. Not as much as the Steelers were doing. And then we had Dan Henney come down here after the Redskins won the Super Bowl, and then we put in the Redskins offense. So I ran their offense, and then we put the run and shoot in, which is the worst name for a thing because the run and shoot is basically a spread offense. What does every team in the league run now? A spread offense.
Spread offense.
4 and 5 wide. The only difference with the run and shoot is got a little half roll by the quarterback. And our offensive tackle's in a 3-point stance now? No, they're never. Hardly the left tackle isn't because he's never covered by a tight end. He's in opposite position. And I excelled at all 3 offenses. I adapted and played every one. In fact, the run and shoot offense is harder to block. It's harder for an offensive tackle to play in that offense than it is in a traditional offense because we got no helping on the outside, and they're moving the pocket. So the quarterback is in the shotgun or under center, and he's moving 3 yards over like this, which means I have to take an outside edge rusher flat, and I have to take him quick. I can't take them off and back and go ahead and stay in phase with the quarterback, which is so much harder. They used to do it when the running back used to relieve a chip on the outside to help us, and then June said, no, we're not doing that anymore. You guys are on your own. That's Chris Hinton. He was, it was tough because you got to take it flat and wide, and it's a lot harder to pass block out of the run and shoot for the front side tackle than it is the off tackle.
Wow, that's something. And that's the thing. You get the job done. That's all that counts.
I've always admired, athletes that are more technical sound because not that you didn't have God-given ability. You're running a 4.6 40. You have physical traits, of course, to play in the NFL. But if you are more technically sound than just being big, then you are probably a harder worker. You're better mechanically. I think that says a lot more about you and your craft than you just having that God-given ability or just being big in the weight room.
Yeah, one of the guys you see now who's very effective and as a left tackle, and he's technically sound. He does some things a little different than I do, that I kind of disagree with, but it works for him. Is Joe Thomas. Okay, there was a tackle who played for the Steelers for years, Tunch Yilkin. Played right tackle. No Tunch very well. Tunch and his guard Wolfie, they actually got into martial arts, and they would go do trap and redirect on pass rushers like that. They used to show it to me out at our annual meeting at the Nflpa, and I said, Tunch, you know what? I can't conceptualize this. I know it's working for you and good for you, but what I'm doing is working for me. I'm not going to try and switch. But there's different ways to do it that are technically sound, but now it almost looks like sumo wrestling out there, to be honest with you.
It really does. Who taught you the best way of doing this?
Well, I'll tell you a story. I learned the fundamentals from Jerry Hanlon at University of Michigan. And then the only offensive line coach who had the same fundamentals that I was coached by was Jim Hannafin. You know who taught him to Jim Hannafin? Jerry Hanlon from Michigan. God rest Jim's soul. He passed away last year. So.
Yes, I remember that. Been telling my followers today's game essentially the Falcons run and shoot.
He is correct. Well, they're passing 70, 80% of the game now. I mean,
right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of passing. Yeah.
That's true.
We have another question for you about the modern day Falcons from ATLGA Faithful. Do the Falcons have the personnel to solidify the offensive line this year?
I don't know. They had their offensive line could have been solidified last year and the previous years. I actually was starting to do some work with Dan Quinn and the offensive line coach, and we were actually supposed to get together last year and start working with the players. And then because I showed them what was wrong and what needed to be corrected, and they agreed with me. But COVID hit, and then that just got tanked.
Yeah.
The offensive line coach that they have now, I don't know anything about. I have no idea. I'm going to be just curiously looking at it when they, start the preseason. Keenan Forney that played for the Falcons, he and I have become friends. I actually met him out at training camp one day a couple of years ago, and he actually tutors college offensive linemen and some in the NFL. And I was actually supposed to work a couple of the Falcons this year, but it's too late now through Keenan Forney. And I showed him everything that he was doing and showed him the correct way to do it. And he told me, he says, "Are you telling me everything that I was taught to this point was wrong?" I went, "Yep." And he said, "Yeah." But I don't know. The guy who asked the question, I'll evaluate it just like you are and see. I don't know if they're going to be changing certain techniques. I don't know what the fundamentals of the offensive line coach teaches. Don't know. Are the offensive linemen that they have good enough athletes? Probably, but I don't care how good an athlete you are. But if you're getting your body in a bad position, off balance, your leverage points and angles are wrong, it makes your job so much more difficult unless you've got proper body position, proper angles, and everything like that. It just makes your job easier. The guy usually across the line from you, the best athletes are not the offensive line. They're always the defensive line. They're the better athletes. That's why they're put on that side of the football. And, you have to take away the angles to the point of attack. You have to go ahead and force them. I could get really technical with y'all, but that's not this kind of show we play.
No, hey, I'm actually I'm learning a lot as it is. So, keep going on this pace.
Well, the thing is, I'll give you one little thing. He said you never set a defensive lineman square. Never do.
Okay.
And the reason you don't is that you give them a two-way go. You always keep your helmet on the inside number protocol, whether you're a tackle or whether you're most especially a guard. So if I got somebody head up to me as a guard, a defensive tackle, I'm actually going to take on the left guard, I'm going to take a little step inside to go ahead and put my helmet on his inside number. The other thing is that the offensive linemen today have very poor hand placement. They get nervous, and instead of shooting their hands inside, they kind of grab outside like this.
Yeah.
Is that there's always a point when you're pass blocking where the defensive lineman is going to give up your chest and you got to take it. Now, it's not necessarily the same all the time. Some guys, you take it and hold inside. There's little handles we used to grab inside the shoulder pad, stick our fingers in there, and it was like holding on to refrigerator handles then. But some guys you do that to. Other guys you hit and release. Like an Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald is a hit and release guy because if you go ahead and try and grab his chest and go and think, you're going to get overextended and then he's going to be gone because you can't get it. So he's a guy you got to punch and release, and you got to punch and release him early. You also have to go ahead and take the inside away from him and put your head on the inside number with him. And then other guys you play differently. Every player I ever played against, I didn't play the same. I developed an approach to that rusher that fit my need, my success need to go ahead and defeat him. I didn't play Richard Dent the same as I played Bruce Smith or Lawrence Taylor or a Pat Swilling or an Al Baker. It depends on who I was playing because they were all different, so I had to play them different.
How much time did you spend in the film room looking at
more than anybody? What we used to do is that, I used to always come in early and watch film, and then my offensive line used to come in there with me. Most of the guys did. And I would help the other offensive line and point things out and things like that. And then after practice, I would watch film again, and the guys would come in again. So we didn't have any coach in there or anything like that. It was just me and my group. And, we were real honest with each other. These are your strong points. These are your strengths. These are the things. And so you got to do this. And I'd evaluate every one of the defensive players we're playing. This is what this guy does. This is a tell. Some guys had tells on what they were going to do and everything like that. And that would just be our group working together. So I'd probably watch, I don't know, at least 3, if not 4 to 5 hours of film every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and a little bit on Friday. And then on Saturday, the night before the game, too. or that we'd be there in the day and then do it. Yeah, a lot of film.
Mm-hmm.
Film is and I find with the modern day players, you can tell that they might be watching film, but they don't know how to watch film. They don't know what they're looking for, and they don't know what they're looking at. I would change my set depths. I would go ahead, a big, bull rush guy, why am I giving him, 2-3 steps of momentum? I'm going to take him now because I know he can't beat me with speed. In fact, a lot of the offensive now lines do. There's two theories in offensive line play. One is they want to keep a uniform front and they want to go ahead and move back in a uniform group like this. Well, that's the worst thing. I even saw the Falcons doing it, is that they actually had their guards almost a whole yard off of the line of scrimmage. And there's a 340-pound defensive tackle. And then at the snap of the ball, they'd actually back up more. Now, why am I giving somebody who weighs 340 pounds 3 steps of momentum?
Yes.
I want to get up on the line of scrimmage. I want to take him now. He's not, and so there's different things like that. I actually pointed it out to the offensive line coach, and I said, a sideline shot came up when we were watching film. I said, see that there? What do you see? He goes, well, I said, do you see those defensive linemen? They're all a yard off the ball. He goes, yeah. He says, you know why they're doing that? He goes, because either a defensive coordinator or their defensive line coach wants them to have more room to operate and more momentum. So what you're playing into their hands by having your offensive lineman off of the ball and backing up at the snap. Sometimes it's not that hard.
Do you have any interest in coaching? Have you done any coaching, and have you had any interest in coaching for the Falcons?
I had a chance to do it. I didn't make the right decision. I didn't think of it at the time. June Jones asked me to come back for my 18th year, and I actually agreed to contract terms with it and everything. It was a week in the training camp, and I'd never sat on the bench my entire career. And I told June, I said, June, it's going to take me a couple of weeks to get into football shape, and I'd lost some weight, and I could put that back on and everything. And he said, you could be a player coach. And I went, June, and I told him on a Sunday, because we agreed to terms on a Friday. I said, I got to talk to my wife. I said, June, you know what's going to happen here is that you're not going to leave the best player on the bench. I'm going to be playing in those games.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And the thing that I knew it was time to retire going into my 17th season when I was still feeling the effects physically from the 16th season. That's why I announced my retirement going into the 17th season. So I ended up turning him down. What I should have said to him was that, you know what, June, I'll come and help you coach, but I'm not going to be a player coach.
Yeah.
They probably would have done that. I just didn't think of it. But I would have done it locally here. But when I retired, my kids were young still. And,
right.
And I know the coaching carousel is that you're moving every 3, 4, 5 years. I didn't want to take my kids out of school. I didn't want to displace them into another city. I just didn't want to do that to my 2 girls. Because you're also, with the off seasons they have now and the work week that you have during the season, you're never home.
No, you're not.
You're never home.
It's developed to be that kind of position now.
Yeah. It's a tough ass job. You're never home. So, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do that to my wife. I didn't want to do that to my girls. So I did other things.
Right.
But now I'm actually interested because, we've been empty nesters for quite a while now. And that's why I started getting with Keenan 40. And we had something going here, but the virus just kind of, screwed that up. So
yeah. Do you think it's something that you could get into now, though?
It is. Yeah. It is. And I'm trying to work with Keenan and get that with him. And, I told him I only wanted to work with the professional guys. So obviously they're going back to work here in a week. So that's not going to happen. So if it materializes with him, it'll happen next year. And I haven't contacted any teams or anybody to say, hey, listen, I'm interested in helping you out or something like that. I'd rather do it here locally where I live.
Sure.
I'm 65 years old now. I don't want to be a coach. I want to be a teacher.
Right.
And that's it. That's a little different. I want to be a specialist. So, yeah, but we'll see. It might materialize. Fortunately, I'm 50 pounds lighter than I was when I was playing. And miraculously, I feel fine. I don't have any, other than some minor back problems. My knees are fine. My ankles are fine. My hips are fine. My shoulders are fine. I should be an absolute cripple, and I'm not. Because all my contemporaries and friends are. I look at them and go, geez. My older brother is only a year and a half older than me. He's had 3 shoulder injuries, had a hip replaced. He's had elbow surgery, and he says, "What's wrong with this picture? You played football in the NFL. You're in better shape than I
am." Yeah, that's right. Oh, it is fortunate that you're still going strong, and that you're able to, that you made it through your career that way. That because you weren't injured, you didn't hit the injured list too much during your career either.
No, I didn't miss a game until I blew my knee out, and then I only missed that was 5 games, and then I only missed 4 more games after that, so 9 total. I had to make myself into a football player,
Yeah.
And I got bigger as the game got bigger. And I never stopped working out. I mean, I had a program in the off season where it was a 3-phase program. There was the healing phase, where you want to heal.
Right.
Then you wanted to get back to where you were the previous year, and then the 3rd phase was to improve on that. As you got older, though, the 3rd phase kind of went away.
Yes.
You healed, and then you got back to where you were. Remember, I said when I was going on my 17th year, I never got back to where I was. I was close, but I was still feeling the effects. And I said, the game's starting to take its toll on it. And we practiced different back then. We had full speed contact on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and we did, believe it or not, short yardage and goal line on Fridays. I mean, the modern day player, I might have been able to play for 25 years if we practiced the way that they play now. In fact, my best season as a pro was in 1991 when I gave up 1 sack the last game of the year to some guy that didn't even deserve to be on the field. I just had a mental lapse. But the best I felt as a pro, because I had an eye injury in the 3rd day of training camp, and I never practiced all of training camp, not once. And I didn't put a helmet on and play until the last preseason game, and I played the whole half. So I was fresh, healthy, not beat up. So I made another mistake in my career. And June was, Glambo was our coach, but June was our offensive coordinator. I should have said, guys, see how well I played in 91? Yeah. He says, I don't need to come to training camp anymore. I'll come and help, but I don't need to practice anymore. I know how to play the game. I don't need to even play in preseason games because I can just suit up and go right now. And that 91 season was evidence. I might have played a few more years if I had done that, but I didn't think of it too late. So
Julio Jones has done that for years with the Falcons. Yeah. I don't know if he's going to do it again with his new team, but
there was that tackle. I can't remember his name. Who was doing it for years with Seattle. What was his name? He never went to training camp. You guys will figure it out later after the show. I can't remember.
Okay. Right.
But ATO GA Faithful is a big advocate for you joining the Falcon staff.
The only guy that I know left at the Falcons is I know Rich McKay real well, because Rich McKay and I served on the competition committee for 8 years. I was representing the players. As president, Gene Upshaw would go to meetings, and I'm pretty sure they're still doing that. But I don't know anybody else over there, and I don't know any of these coaches at all. I have no relationship with them, so I don't know who to approach to that if I would do that.
It's too bad, because I think you could still make a hell of a teacher. You can really teach a lot of things that, I don't know, do you ever see the NFL going back the other way towards more quickness, more physical fitness, more technique? Or do you think this 300-pound plus player is the way we're going to finish, we're going to keep going with?
I don't know. They keep getting bigger and they keep drafting him. I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah.
it's painfully obvious what's wrong. I mean, like I said earlier, I think that every offensive line is anywhere from 20 to 25 pounds too heavy. Your endurance it affects your endurance, it affects your mobility and your athleticism. You can be as strong. We'll give you a perfect example. Bill Kazmaier, who was the world's strongest man for years. I don't know if you guys remember who he was. And we actually, R.C. Thielman and I, because we had no off-season programs back then. We were training at this place called American Fitness. And Bill Kazmaier, we were training with him. Now, Bill Kazmaier got a chance. This guy, was the first guy to go ahead and bench press 705 pounds, and he could squat like 1,200 pounds. I mean, he was immensely strong. He got a chance to go ahead and go to the Green Bay Packers, for training camp to see if he could play offensive guard. Well, he came back. He says it was the most awful experience I've ever had in my life. He says, you know me, if I can plant my feet and I have to push on something or lift something, I can do it. But to go ahead and be strong like that and not have the mobility, he says, I was getting tossed all over the field, and I'm twice as strong, about 4 times as strong as everybody that I played against. He says it was one of the most humiliating experiences of his life. So, like I said before, you got to not only have size, you got to have strength, you got to have mobility to play offensive line. And the mobility one is sketchy. Plus, they're setting wrong with kick slide. Look it up. It's terrible.
I will. I'm going to. Believe me.
Yeah. I saw it one time a number of years ago. I was watching the combine for some reason, and they went ahead and were saying, okay, they're showing the offensive tackle candidates, draft candidates. Okay, chose to take a kick slide. They do it wrong. So I'll do it this way. I go, oh, wow. Ask Anthony Munoz never sat like that. His feet were always square, upfield, balanced, just like my work. I never went ahead and opened my hip up and put my leg out there, overextended, short in the corner. And I said, the absolutely wrong thing to do, and they're all being taught it.
That's amazing. Well, we're all coaches now. Everybody gets the all-22 film on the NFL.com, the Game Pass. And, yeah, I'm going to go on NFL.com and take a look at some of that because that's fascinating to hear you say that.
It is, yeah. I mean, that's why, hey, my job was to go ahead and protect the quarterback. I hate seeing him get a hit,
Exactly. And that's the thing. And you did your job as well or better than anybody in the NFL. My definition of the Hall of Famer is, did he dominate the position during his era? And, it's obvious that you did. And that's why it's still amazing to me that it doesn't seem like you're even considered from year to year. Almost like your name kind of falls in maybe down there, and I just don't see why. It's amazing to me.
One of the, all the electors now, some of them weren't even born when I was playing. But it doesn't matter now because I'm on the senior committee, and I don't even know who. I think there 6 electors on that, I think.
Yeah.
I don't even know who they are. I have no idea. This is probably more. I've opened up more now than I really have to anyone about this. I'm not a boastful kind of guy, but I guess now that you're old, you get to say whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, and why not? I mean, you did dominate. You were one of the dominant players of your era.
Yeah, the best 2 tackles in the 80s were me and Anthony Munoz.
Exactly. So it's ridiculous to me that you don't get any more consideration. And to you Falcons fans, I've been saying it the last 2 weeks, and I say it again today, it's up to you. Okay? We can't do it for you. I can't do it. Dave can't do it. Mike can't do it. You've got to write in. And you don't even have to write. You can type it up and print it out. I know it's getting
can't find a pen.
Yeah. I know this is kind of old-fashioned anymore, the paper and pencil style, but you can even type it out. You get some of these things, and you get some of these. And
You can tell Tom we're old, see, because I got stamps right here too. See,
there you go. I know. But you have to do it. Send in your nominations to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, 2121 George Hallis Drive, NW, Canton, Ohio, 44708. And as I say, you've got to do it, right? Because there is no Falcons Hall of Famer who played with the Falcons his entire career. All right. You know, I'm a Bears fan. We got Bears players who led navy blue and orange their entire career. So, you know, we got tons of them in there. Probably the closest is Claude Humphries, actually, that played his most productive years as a Falcons player and still made he was a senior committee in Shriney.
yeah, his wife had a lot to do with that. She started a campaign. And actually, my daughter Lisa, you know, copied what she did.
Actually, you know, Jerry Kramer, the great Packers guard from the late '60s, his daughter had to finally get involved and start putting together a campaign. And I know I helped her out a little bit on Twitter. I wrote an article, and she had to work hard. And this is Jerry Kramer. This is a guy who was voted one of the greatest players in the NFL's first 50 years.
Yeah, and the great block in the championship game against Dallas.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, he had trouble getting in. So that's why I say. And no, Tony, I know you said you didn't get an answer. You're not going to get an answer. But you are going to put his name in the thoughts of the selectors. And I don't know. It's a little late this year. We were a little late starting this push. And I don't know how well it's going to do this year. But keep it in mind. Keep this push going. That you need to be writing in. Just make the nomination. And if they see enough nominations, then they're going to give it a lot more consideration. It's worked for other players, and it's going to work for Mike. I have no doubt. Also, go to MikeKennFootball.com. A lot of great stuff on Mike's career. A lot of testimonials from his opponents who basically have all said the same thing. Needs to be a Hall of Famer. Should be in the Hall of Fame. And it's time to correct this. It's time to get this going. So, you know, I'm going to make this push every week.
Well, appreciate it, Tom. Nice visiting with you. You also, Dave. Thanks for your help. Hopefully it'll happen, and I'll still be alive when it does. So,
I love this, Mike. This was fantastic. I really enjoyed this.
This hour flew by. So thanks so much, Mike, for coming on.
Well, you know, you accumulate a lot of knowledge and stories over a 17-year career. You could talk for hours about this crap. So.
You know, I learned more in the last hour about some things that I've learned during, you know, watching the NFL for as long as I have. It's really something. So I really do appreciate it.
You're welcome, y'all. Thank you.
And best of luck to your candidacy. We really hope you do eventually get into the Hall of Fame, if not very soon.
Appreciate it. I enjoyed it too. Y'all take care.
All right.
Fans, listeners, please like our channel here on YouTube. And don't forget to, again, write in to the Pro Football Hall of Fame to get Mike Kenn inducted finally into the Hall. That's it for us this weekend. Have a great week. We'll be back next Saturday at noon Eastern Time.